it does help when you take it off of mute. So
yeah, it's a convenient button I found down there. So
noticing the attendance is a little low. Is it because I'm back, or is it because Skip had nothing important to say the last couple weeks and scared everybody off?
I scared everybody away. That's it.
So it is good to be back in office this week. I took 2 weeks off inadvertently. And if I do recommend, if you ever get stuck in quarantine, that a 5-star resort with room service is the place to be. So it wasn't bad. And then my daughter got to learn the joys of traveling with me. So one is I fly business class because I'm a giant, and 2 is I switch planes on a whim. So you've never seen somebody fly through the airport like me. I am that person, like zipping from one side of DIA to the other. I made it through customs. So I switched my plane from Omaha to Lincoln because I found my Omaha flight was delayed. Switched it to Lincoln for a similar flight straight across. So I was 60 miles closer to my house. Got through customs, got through security, got through 69 or 61 gates at DIA, switched terminals, and did all of that in 40 minutes.
All right. So for those of you
I get to the plane and my daughter is just drenched in sweat.
Yeah. For those of you that haven't had the pleasure of navigating Denver International, that is quite a feat. They have the record.
City, man.
Yeah, the B terminal. Did you fly out of B?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So the B terminal has the dubious record of being one of the longest terminals. I don't know if worldwide, but I'm pretty sure in the U.S.
Long.
And from they got some really. You say you're down to gate 61. Those are the little puddle hopper gates.
Those are express jets.
Yep. And from one end of those little gates to the very other end of other little gates is about a mile.
Yep.
And navigating that with luggage and travelers and all. Oh yeah, that's an adventure all of its own.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like what we do though. Like when you're with an engineer, we solve problems.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
made it to that gate exactly the minute they did last call to close out. But I saved myself a 2-hour layover and an hour drive home.
Yep.
And that's kind of what we do and so I thought it was ironic that we're doing planning and delivery this week. So we planned out like this HIT schedule probably 2 years ago. So we ran this last year. So if you go through our 2021 roadmap, it's very similar to the 2022 roadmap with some tweaks.
Yep.
And so just so happened this week, we talk about project planning and delivery. And one of the biggest feedbacks I get from corporate IT, and I don't know if this is the way it is in MSP world, but for some reason, leadership in corporate IT thinks you cannot plan for failure. And there's this feeling that you cannot, things change so much that you cannot plan for it. And I 100% disagree with that.
Yep.
And I can give you evidence this week because of last week's snafu with my daughter failing her COVID test, having to get stuck in Cancun for another 5 days, is that, I had built a buffer into my work schedule with getting newsletters scheduled out, with setting appointments at different times, with bringing my laptop with me, and then having any hard meetings moved into different weeks. So just in case things went wrong, I had this like buffer of 1 week. So because of everything planned out, all the podcasts were posting, videos were updating, everything was going out. The business kept running smoothly. Skip was in office and taking care of any in-person things. I was able to log on from the resort and actually do work. So you can plan for failure. You can make yourself your projects resilient enough that you can deal with this. And it all comes down to just planning and setting expectations, which is what we talk about today. How do you set expectations appropriately?
Yeah, from the MSP perspective, I've spent many years at a at a Cisco partner, and we did just a ton of project work. We had our niche in our marketplace, and we had our certifications with Cisco, and we really leveraged that and did a lot of really great things. And so my experience, and I'm talking about here, is kind of from Cisco, but I imagine it's the same with anybody. But we really had a truly world-class team of engineers working for us, and they could do amazing things. We had strong support from our vendors, in supply chain and manufacturers, and we had good relationships with our customers. So that sounds like the perfect recipe for just a, rainbows and roses sort of, implementation, right? No, something always came up. There was always a problem that we had to deal with. And, kind of, Adam, to key off yours, you can't plan for failure. Failure happens so many times. We just took it as, expected. And so it did become part of our plans. We were constantly building buffers into our projects. We were constantly looking at, resources halfway through this project. Let's start planning on who we can pull off to fix the last project that something has happened, whatever it is. And so it just has to be intentional. You can't wake up every day and just, respond to the fires that are in your inbox right then. You do have to have a methodology and be very intentional about looking out in the future and preparing for what you don't know, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's about building in a buffer. So plan for failure. A hard rule I try to follow is plan for 20% failure. It's an 80-20 rule. I know it's dumb, it's oversimplistic, and there are a million problems with it. But starting with 80-20, 80% of the time, things are going to go smoothly and the way you want. But 20% is going to be all hell. Yep. Now, you have buffers all over the place. Travel time buffers. You've got delivery buffers, like just in case a project runs over. The 20% failure rate is just something that you just got to slip into that. So when you are working a project, you're going to do something next week. You have 20% of your 40-hour week dedicated to failure. Ooh. Just dealing with failure. Just mark it off right now. Yeah. Find some 4-hour spot in your week that you are going to deal with failure. So you can move meetings into that slot. You can use that slot to deal with the failure. You can squish things around a bit. That is what you want. Your car breaks down, that's a failure. So can you move the meeting you're driving to into your 4-hour slot? Having that 4-hour slot will save your life. But the managing the expectations also says, hey, if you talk to people who deal with me regularly, hey, Skip, want to meet on Friday afternoon? Hell no.
No.
That's for emergencies only. People, yep. I set that expectation with everyone. I don't meet with people on Friday afternoons unless it's an emergency or we have whiskey in hand. That is how it works. And that's because that is my failure window. And that's a weekly thing. Now for a vacation, I'm planning the next few days after vacation as a buffer. Like, what if my plane gets delayed? What if something happens and I can't get back to the States? What if I get back to the States and my house burned down? I need to know these. I need to plan for this. And when it doesn't happen, I just gained extra days.
Yes.
I just gained this nice day to a couple days to kind of acclimate. And so many people in engineering set expectations by saying, I will have this done on Tuesday next week. Okay, that's like entry level expectations, people. You also need to set expectations for your failure windows, for your change windows and things like that. But setting expectations is telling people about your schedule. Setting those, hey, we don't meet on Fridays. That is an expectation I set with everyone. And it's just the way it is. So if you look at my calendar, you can get something on Friday morning. Maybe you could squeeze something in.
Yeah.
That is an expectation. And when you set expectations, you say, hey, I'm going to have this done by X. People don't care if that X is in 3 months or 1 month, if you are able to deliver it and meet their expectations. So most of what the setting expectations is just setting the anchor of what you're going to do. Now, if you try to be too aggressive, and this is where a lot of people fail on setting expectations, is they try to set the expectation for as soon as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so if Bob is always doing everything as soon as possible, then everybody starts to expect that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Be careful with
setting the
that.
buffer, and
Yeah.
you say, hey, it's going to be a week out, it's going to be 2 weeks out. That expectation gets set. And
Yes.
people know that if they want Bob's time, then they need to be thinking 2 weeks in advance. And you can train everybody around you to think, oh crap, I need to think 2 weeks in advance. Otherwise, I'm not going to get on that calendar.
Yeah. Well, let me bring up a deal. And so, I throw this one out here sometimes. I don't know if you guys can read it in the deal. If you're looking for something, if you kind of like dark humor, visit despair.com. Not sponsored, sort of thing, but just great stuff. And so I had an incident at place I was working at, MSP I was working at many years ago. I'm director of ops. And again, we have all these Cisco projects running and a variety of other stuff, but the sales team is they're nailing it, man. They're knocking things out in the park. We're closing deals. I'm scrambling to find resources. And, we were setting those as soon as possible expectations. We were setting them with our clients as the operational team. We were setting those expectations with our account managers. And sure enough, we can't meet. All right. We haven't planned for the buffer. We haven't built out that process. So in trying to set expectations and trying to get back on a level ground, I put out I forget what I called it. I had some sort of little term. It was a, project suspension or whatever. And I said, we're not going to start any new projects for like 6 weeks or something. I had a number out there. And my idea was, hey, we've got to get on top of this. We're just constantly running behind. And so, kind of in line of what we're doing here, but here's my big mistake is I did that in a vacuum. All right. I was sitting there, I was, on a phone call with, a project engineer or, emails, looking at our PSA and the tickets and everything. And I'm just like, I make this decision in a vacuum. And I don't know, I was picking up the pieces from that disaster for a week. And people were beating me up internally because I didn't get the buy-in of my team. And this is important because if you talk to your team, your key stakeholders about communicating how we're going to set expectations and hey, we're going to build these buffer zones in, and you need buy-in from all of your key stakeholders so that if you have to make some sort of, radical statement like I did, work stoppage for 6 weeks or something while we catch up, you're going to have the support of your team and clear communication to your clients. So set expectations, but don't just make them random. Talk to your team. Maybe, if you're running behind, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you need one of those emergency meetings on a Friday afternoon, get your team in there and say, hey, let's set expectations so that we can all communicate clearly with what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So setting expectations appropriately, you just got to set them and then you get to meet them. And so if you're going to miss a deadline, adjust the deadline. Don't be late. Don't call your client and say after the fact, oh yeah, we ran over. And go back to them and say, hey, it looks like Bob's not going to be able to be there on site. We need to reschedule for next week because there's a conflict, and just be open and honest about it so that your client can adjust.
Yeah. And you guys probably know this, but if you talk to your dispatcher, so if your organization set up and you have a dispatcher and you talk to them and you say, hey, if I call a client up and I need to move a meeting, what is the best buffer that we can work with. All right. And they're going to tell you some number that works well for them. A lot of it's personality based, but I can guarantee you that if it's one day, they're not going to like it. If they've scheduled for something to happen on Wednesday and you have to tell the customer on Tuesday that that's not going to happen the next day, there's going to be fallout from that. There's breakage you're going to have to clean up. But if you set the expectation that, hey, we'll be there next Wednesday, and you call them on the Wednesday before and say, hey, we're going to have to push this out a day or so, those sort of conversations become much easier. The trust that your clients have with you, it's much less likely to be affected by those longer term expectations. So just kind of a, coloring around the edges here, setting those expectations so you can make these calls further and further into the future makes you look more prepared, makes you look more professional. So it is really, really important.
An operational person will say, hey, let me plan out tomorrow. A strategic person says, let me plan out next year.
Yes.
So that's how this tool comes into play. And that's why we have this over here. When will you do this project that's been approved? Is it in 2022, 2023? So an operational person will come into the month view and we'll start planning this out. This is where you sit down with your service team, with your delivery team, and you figure out which week or which month are you going to do this. This is your planning sessions internally to your MSP. When you're talking to your clients, we're setting quarters out here. Now, this is where I get into this topic of what do you mean by top-down planning and delivery? And this is going to be really hard for some of you to agree with, because in an engineer's career, most of the time we are planning bottom up, meaning that we are thinking about what am I delivering? Where am I physically installing it? And when am I going to be in that spot? So I'm going to be at that client on Tuesday. I need to put a server on this floor, and then I need to make sure that Susan, Mary, and Al's computers are talking to it. And that's a bottom up planning process. A top down planning process starts at the year and goes, okay, what projects are we working on for this client this year? How do I coordinate these projects to align with the business goals at the client so that I am not when my ops department gets this ticket, they're not going to install this server during a busy time.
Yeah.
So I am my first thought is business. When is an appropriate time from the business to do this kind of work? And I'm looking at an annual schedule first. And then I'm zooming down into, okay, so what quarter makes most sense? So I've got this approved. Yeah, it's obvious. We're going to do this year. Cool. I'm going to move these things out to next year, or they're not even approved. That's great. I can move these things around so that the right things are floating to the top and I can watch them do this. And I can say, we're going to do these ones in 2022. And I'm going to schedule these out for 2023 sometime. But then as the account manager VCIO, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say, okay, what do I know about this company? This is a school. So I need to do these changes in the summer because I need students not to be around. I need teachers not to be around. I need to do these changes during holiday windows because this is going to update all the Chromebooks. It's going to do all this stuff that's going to be that could potentially be disruptive. And then I'm going to hand off these tickets to my engineers to say, find a time that fits within these constraints and let me know what works. That is a top-down planning and delivery. And it takes a while to get into that mindset because we're so used to saying, here's the task I need to do. I am open Tuesday afternoon. It's all about me. It's Tuesday afternoon. I am free. Is the client open then? Looks like they've got a window at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. I can get into that.
Yeah,
That's talking about the asset, me, and the device and what needs to be done. It's just very task oriented. No consideration for, is this a good time for the business? No overarching prioritization of what needs to be done first. Can I synergize this change with other changes? So when I talk about setting expectations, do it in that order. What year, what quarter, what time works best for the client in their business operations to do this type of change.
Yep.
That's a top down. And you will set expectations with your client that are so much better.
Yep. So let me give everyone a really practical, if you aren't doing something like this, this is something that you can do right now. All right. When we wrap up this call, you know, the event in the Zoom event, it booked out an hour for this. Okay. So this is something when we get off the call here, you can do this. If you have any financial customers, they are going to follow a very set holiday schedule. All right. In the US, and we got mostly US folks today, you know, in the US, the banking holidays are really clear. They're already set. So do you have that calendar quickly accessible? Is your team planning, like Adam was talking, from bottom up? Are they setting at Monday of one week going, oh, wait, hey, next Monday is a bank holiday. We can do that. A week is too short. You need to be looking at the whole year, talking to your team, talking with your client, and planning to do some things during those bank holidays. All right, those are great change windows. You know, patches that need to be applied and servers need to be rebooted or whatever. You can easily do that at Monday at 10 a.m. if it's a bank holiday. All right, versus obviously, you know, any other Monday at 10 a.m. would be a disaster. And so these little things, you can snowball those, turn that around and start looking at your government clients. They're going to follow a very similar schedule and start building these out. And once you find, you know, that these work, you're going to build more buy-in from your team. Back to getting that, you know, don't work in a vacuum. You're going to get your team involved in this and setting expectations with them of, oh, hey, we've got this thing coming up. Let me go check the calendar that it's already out there. You guys have already put it up there. And I think we may be able to get this change window in easily, you know, 6 weeks from now or something, the next holiday that comes up. So a really practical one that can start this process rolling for you guys if you're kind of stuck in this bottom up method right now.
Yeah. So the easy tips, just for everybody's takeaways here, are start thinking in terms of annual planning always. Like right now, I'm thinking about December. You know, we're 6 months away from Christmas season, people.
That's
months.
it. Yep.
That's 2 quarters. You are almost there. 180 days, people. Scary. That's when people become unavailable. It's when some major change windows happens. What things happen? What is going to get that time? You need to be planning that now. Which businesses fit in that schedule? So that top down, when you can walk into your customer and say, one of our key differentiators is that we do top down delivery, meaning that we think about your business first. We think about what is going to synergize with your business and when to do things to help your business grow so that we have minimal impact on your business. That's a key thing. And then your ops department has to work around that. But you as the account manager or VC, IO have to set those expectations that this is when we work on things with the client. And that's where this road mapping tool comes into play. So when you're in Joe's trucks, you can actually put, you know, if you want to put in like a, heck, even put in a project here that's just a junk project that you use to block out time, just so you remind yourself, don't do things fourth quarter because this client is a retailer and that's their busy quarter. Well, you need to be perfectly running at that point in time. You know, you can go through and add in projects the rest of the year, just align them around their busy windows. That's your top down approach. And now the ops people are like, but I want to do things in November. And like, well, you can't.
Yeah.
Why not? There's plenty of time to do it then. My team is free. Yes, but that does not work for the client. It does not follow their business strategy. You are not going to go in on Black Friday and update their retail servers.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're not going to do it. What we're going to do is you have to find that time. Now, there are clients like educational institutions where that's fantastic. Do all of that. And now you're lining up as an account manager, prioritization between scheduling, like Skip said, between multiple types of customer entities. And you can do that because you took the business into consideration first. And some of you already kind of do this.
Yes.
And that's fantastic. But you need to be deliberate. You need to make it an approach. What is the first question you ask when planning out a project? It's not, do we have time and capability? It's when is the best time for the customer? When this year is the best time for the customer. If you're thinking when this month, you're already in operations side, you're already thinking bottom up.
So there's kind of roughly 3 stages to this. One, you're running behind, you're always, rescheduling. So you're below the bar. All right. But let's say you get on top of this and you get ahead of things, you're able to plan out better. You're not having to reschedule with your clients so much. So let's say you're meeting the bar. But once you build some operational excellence within your organization, pretty soon you're going to be above the bar. And you're going to have more of these situations where, hey, we planned out so well, we've got this down. We actually now have a free week. The project didn't go bad. And we were able to mitigate whatever came up. We have some extra days here. And then you get to decide, what do you do with that? Do you hand that out to your team as maybe a light work week or something to incentivize your team? Does that show up in finances? Do you have some money in a budget now that you can pay bonuses for exceeding work expectations? Do your account managers get a little bit if times are set? Or do you roll that out to your clients and call that client up and say, Mr. Customer, I know we had scheduled to start this off the first week of August, but it looks like we have accomplished some things. Our projects are running pretty well. How about we move that up to the 4th week of July? And so now your clients see you as someone who's not running behind, but someone who's running ahead. So there's a lot of value that may or may not come down to dollars, but there's a lot of value that you get to have as a director to decide, how am I going to spend this? Whose lives can I make better with the rewards that we're getting from this? So there again, 3 stages to that. Obviously, you want to be up there at the top so that things are much less stressful and the great work that you do benefits people, and we keep that snowball rolling. They're continuing to be satisfied with their work, and we get things done. And it can definitely impact your margins. If you develop a reputation as an organization who can set clear expectations and deliver on time, then you have some credibility to maybe pump those margins up a little bit. If especially if you're doing a lot of project work and there's somebody on the table that is, beating you on price, you have the opportunity to say, hey, why don't you call some of their referrals and see how well they meet expectations? Call our referrals and see and compare the two. And that could be the difference in a lot of money for your organization. So it's not just that we do this to do our jobs better. Hey, we want the bottom line, right? And so I want to emphasize the fact that it may take a few steps, but this is one of the things that can maybe recover some of the margin that you've lost in some of these low cost deals. Sometimes it's a race to zero, right? With big competitors, and you need to get some margin points back in those deals. This is an exercise you can go through to help recover some of that.
Yeah, and looking professional, being a VCIO, and being able to say you are a top-down approach to project planning means that your perceived value is going to go through the roof.
Absolutely.
Because no one else is doing this. Everybody else is like, it's kind of like people who say, oh yeah, you're strategic. Cool. You're strategic because you have a life cycle plan for your PCs. That's not strategy, people. Strategy is business alignment. Strategy is making your clients money. Top-down approach project management, you can say you do that, but when your client actually sees you accommodating their schedule first and then fitting everything else in, now you are looking like a professional organization and they're paying you a premium and they feel like your premium is worth it.
Yeah. And let me offer one more tip. So there is a philosophical reason why projects don't disappear off the project roadmap after they're completed. We could put some automation in there, right? You select the project, you set it to status completed. We could just make that disappear. Don't do that. All right. Those check marks are great because I know you guys have been involved in these conversations and you work like crazy. You do a mountain of things for your clients and you sit down in the next engagement and all they can do is gripe about that one thing that didn't go right. That one printer that keeps jamming, whatever. And you kind of take it in the teeth because, you have a hard time sometimes communicating the value. Leave those projects on the roadmap that have been completed until you have a conversation with the client. And that's when you go in and say, Mr. Customer, as expected, we were able to hit the target here. We got the price in, we met our expectations. Review that and remind the clients that you set clear expectations and you hit them. Or even when you exceed expectations, that's information that you can plug into those. And here's the cool part about it. If you're on a quarterly cycle meeting with your clients, you do a project, you finish it, it all goes great, okay? Update the report with that great information because 6 weeks later, you're gonna have another QBR with them. 6 weeks, everyone's gonna forget the success that you did. But if you use the evergreen cycle, if you keep that updated, the next cycle you set down, you can talk about your successes. You can make sure the client knows what you did really, really well, and that's going to change and color the conversations going forward.
Yep. So setting expectations, as 90% of it is about communicating and understanding what matters. What matters is you actually meet expectations and manage them long term. And you do that by understanding what your client wants and understanding where your teams are. And then you'll be a much better off entity. You will be able to charge higher rates. You will be able to look more professional and you'll be less stressed because when crap hits the fan, you built in your buffers, you worked around the schedule of the clients and everybody's happy. And even if you do have to move things, you have areas to move them to. You have a buffer where you can move something like, hey, I need to move you into my Thursday because I got into a car crash on Tuesday. You can set expectations. The worst thing you can do is not set expectations and the client will make up their own. And now you got to deal with their expectations that are all over the place and you didn't meet them. You didn't even know about it. And now you're being fired because you didn't meet an imaginary expectation.
Well, that's a really good point. Let me say that again, Adam, make sure everyone hears that. If you don't set expectations, your client will. So who do you want setting those expectations? That's a really good point.
So let's see here. What do we got next week? We're coming up on the end of quarter 2. So take
for reals this time.
Soft, SLAs. So we have 2 weeks left in the quarter, people. Then we're in quarter 3. That means that we're well on our way to September. And where are you in your project schedule? So we're going to be talking next week about, looks like we're going to be talking about ticket review and SLAs. And then we're going to kind of put all this service review together into project maps. What do they look like? How do you use those project remote roadmaps? And maybe we'll slap in some proposal work there too. But we want to have you setting expectations with your customers that impress them over time. So join us next week. Ticket review. Ugh. SLAs, no fun, but still, it's all part of service delivery.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. And we'll see you next week.